The charity gala encounter. The crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across the polished marble floor of the Grand Belmont Hotel ballroom. Cassandra Wells smoothed her hands down the deep burgundy silk dress she'd borrowed from her sister, taking a steadying breath. She'd been to dozens of corporate events in her 5 years as executive assistant to Julian Ashford, but tonight felt different somehow. "You're doing that thing again?" Julian's voice came from beside her, warm with amusement. Cassie looked up at her boss, taking in his perfectly tailored charcoal suit and the way his hazel eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. "What thing?" "That thing where you look like you're preparing for battle instead of a charity gala." He offered his arm. "Relax. It's just overpriced wine and people pretending to care about education reform." She laughed despite her nerves, slipping her hand through his arm. Such cynicism from our keynote speaker. "I care about education reform," Julian protested as they moved into the crowd. "I just don't care for pretentious small talk." That was what Cassie had always appreciated about Julian Ashford. Despite building Morgan Technologies from a garage startup to a multi-million-dollar enterprise, he remained surprisingly down-to-earth. He remembered his employees' birthdays, asked about their families, and never made Cassie feel like just another assistant. They navigated through clusters of elegantly dressed donors and board members. Cassie subtly fed Julian reminders about names and previous conversations, a choreographed dance they'd perfected over the years. She was so focused on her mental notes that she didn't see him until it was too late. "Cassie? Cassandra Wells?" Her entire body went rigid. She'd recognized that voice anywhere, had heard it whisper promises in the dark, laugh at her jokes, eventually tell her she wasn't enough. Derek Hollis stood 3 feet away, looking infuriatingly handsome in his navy suit. Beside him was a woman who could have stepped out of a fashion magazine. Tall, willowy, with cascading blonde hair and a dress that probably cost more than Cassie's monthly rent. "Derek." She was proud of how steady her voice sounded. "What a surprise." "Isn't it?" Derek's smile had that edge she remembered too well. Charming on the surface, cruel underneath. "I had no idea you'd be here. Still working for." He glanced at Julian with barely concealed dismissal. "Sorry, I don't think we've met." "Julian Ashford." Julian's tone was polite but cool, his posture subtly shifting to stand closer to Cassie. "And you are?" "Derek Hollis, senior analyst at Westbrook Financial." Derek puffed up slightly. "This is Tiffany Monroe. Perhaps you've seen her lifestyle brand? 500,000 followers?" Tiffany extended a delicate hand, her smile practiced and perfect. "Such a quaint venue for a charity event. Very traditional." The subtle dig wasn't lost on Cassie. Everything about Tiffany screamed expensive, exclusive, elevated. Everything Derek had accused Cassie of not being during their brutal breakup 8 months ago. "So you're still doing the assistant thing?" Derek asked, his tone dripping with false concern. "I thought you'd mentioned wanting to do something more, substantial. Guess some people are comfortable with mediocrity." The words hit like physical blows. During their 3-year relationship, Derek had systematically dismantled her confidence, questioning her ambitions, her choices, her worth. Even now, freed from his toxicity, his judgment still stung. Cassie felt her face flush with humiliation. She opened her mouth to respond, to defend herself, but her throat had closed up. For a horrible moment, she was back in Derek's apartment, listening to him list all the reasons she wasn't good enough, would never be good enough. Then she felt it, Julian's hand, warm and solid, sliding around her waist and pulling her gently against his side. "I apologize for not introducing Cassie properly," Julian said, his voice taking on a tone she'd never heard before, intimate, possessive, tender. "Cassandra is actually much more than my colleague. She's my girlfriend." Cassie's head snapped up to stare at him in shock. Julian met her gaze with such convincing affection that her breath caught. We've been keeping things quiet, Julian continued smoothly, his thumb tracing small circles on her hip through the silk of her dress. You know how complicated workplace relationships can be, even when they develop as naturally as ours did. Derek's expression shifted from smug satisfaction to complete disbelief. Girlfriend? But when did? About 7 months ago, Julian said, the lie rolling off his tongue with impressive ease. He looked down at Cassie with such warmth that she almost believed it herself. Though I'd been interested in her long before that, I just needed the courage to tell her. Tiffany's perfectly shaped eyebrows had risen nearly to her hairline. Julian Ashford? As in Morgan Technologies? I just read about your company in Business Weekly. That's right, Julian said pleasantly, though his attention never left Cassie's face. Though my greatest accomplishment has nothing to do with business, it's convincing this remarkable woman to give me a chance. Then, before Cassie could, process what was happening, Julian cupped her face gently with one hand and kissed her. It wasn't a quick peck for show. His lips were soft and sure against hers, moving with a deliberate tenderness that made her knees weak. His other hand tightened on her waist, pulling her closer, and Cassie found herself responding instinctively. Her hands came up to rest against his chest, feeling his heartbeat racing beneath her palms. The kiss deepened, and suddenly Cassie forgot about Derek, about Tiffany, about the crowded ballroom around them. There was only Julian, the taste of him, the warmth of him, the way he held her like she was precious. When they finally broke apart, both breathing harder than normal, Julian rested his forehead against hers for a moment. His hazel eyes were dark with something that looked startlingly real. Sorry, he murmured, just loud enough for her to hear. Too much? Cassie couldn't speak, couldn't think. Her lips still tingled, her heart hammered against her ribs, and nothing made sense anymore. When she finally managed to look around, Derek's face had gone pale. Tiffany was staring at them with undisguised shock and perhaps a hint of jealousy. Well, Derek said, his voice strained, this is unexpected. Congratulations, I suppose. Thank you, Julian said pleasantly, keeping Cassie tucked against his side. Now, if you'll excuse us, I promised Cassie we'd bid on the art auction. She has excellent taste in art and everything else. He guided her away smoothly, his hand never leaving her waist. Cassie moved in a daze, her mind spinning with confusion and something that felt dangerously like hope. What had just happened, and why did that fake kiss feel more real than anything she'd ever shared with Derek? Playing the part. Cassie stared at her ceiling at 3 a.m, replaying the kiss for approximately the 100th time. Her lips still remembered the pressure of Julian's mouth, the way his fingers had tangled gently in her hair. She'd barely slept, her mind a carousel of confusion and unexpected longing. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Julian. Can we talk? Breakfast at Rosie's Diner, 8 a.m.? Her heart did an uncomfortable flip. She typed back a simple yes and spent the next 4 hours alternating between panic and anticipation. Rosie's Diner was blissfully far from the business district, a cozy neighborhood spot with red vinyl booths and the smell of fresh coffee. Julian was already there when she arrived, looking unfairly attractive in jeans and a navy sweater. She'd rarely seen him in casual clothes, and it made him seem more approachable, more human, more dangerous to her already confused heart. Cassie. He stood as she approached, pulling out her chair. Thank you for meeting me. Of course. She accepted the latte he'd already ordered. Cream, no sugar. Exactly how she liked it. He always remembered. They sat in awkward silence, so different from their usual easy rapport. Finally, Julian cleared his throat. About last night, he began, his fingers drumming nervously on his coffee cup. I owe you an explanation and probably an apology. I shouldn't have put you in that position without asking permission first. You were trying to help, Cassie said quietly, stirring her latte to avoid his eyes. I appreciate it. Derek has always had a way of making me feel small. "He's a fool," Julian said, with surprising intensity. "Anyone who made you feel less than extraordinary doesn't deserve a moment of your time." Cassie looked up, startled by the conviction in his voice. Julian took a deep breath. "The thing is, that kiss wasn't entirely for show. I've had feelings for you for a long time, Cassie. Real feelings that go beyond our professional relationship. But I never said anything because of the power dynamic. Because I didn't want to make you uncomfortable." The diner seemed to tilt around her. "You have feelings for me?" "Yes," he said simply. "And last night, when I had an excuse to hold you, to kiss you, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. But I understand if this complicates everything. If you want to transfer to a different department, I'll make it happen immediately. Your career matters more than my feelings." Cassie's mind raced. For 5 years, she'd carefully buried her attraction to Julian, convinced it was one-sided and inappropriate. She'd dated Derek partly to distract herself from her impossible feelings for her boss. "I have feelings for you too," she heard herself confess. "I have for years. But I thought you saw me as just your assistant?" Julian's expression transformed with hope. "Never just anything. You're brilliant, creative, and you make every day better just by being there." They stared at each other across the worn diner table, years of unspoken attraction suddenly exposed. "So what do we do now?" Cassie asked. "I have a proposition," Julian said carefully. "The story's already out there. By now, half the city knows about us from last night. What if we continue the charade publicly? It gives us time to figure out if this can work without immediate pressure. If it doesn't work out, we can claim we realized we were better as friends." "A fake relationship?" Cassie asked. "A real relationship," Julian corrected gently. "But with the cover of people thinking we've been together longer. It protects us both professionally while we figure things out." It was logical, strategic, very Julian. But Cassie saw the vulnerability beneath the practical suggestion. "Okay," she agreed. "Let's try this." The next few weeks were intoxicating. They attended events together, Julian's hand always warm on her back. But privately, they explored their connection carefully. He took her to quiet restaurants where they talked for hours. She learned he secretly loved terrible romantic comedies and could quote entire scenes from The Princess Bride. He discovered her passion for vintage bookstores and her talent for oil painting. They laughed, argued playfully about everything from politics to the best pizza toppings, and slowly, carefully, fell deeper. But Julian's world was different from hers, and the contrast became increasingly obvious. At a museum gala, Cassie overheard 2 women in the restroom. "She's just his assistant," one said, reapplying lipstick. "Playing dress-up in borrowed clothes. Men like Julian Ashford don't actually end up with women like her. She's a face." The words burned, even as Cassie tried to ignore them. Then came dinner with Julian's family. His mother, Patricia Ashford, was a legendary venture capitalist who'd built her own empire. The Ashford estate was intimidating. Rolling grounds, marble columns, artwork worth more than most people's houses. Patricia's smile was cold as she greeted Cassie. "So you're the assistant who's captured my son's attention. How enterprising of you!" The implication was clear. Throughout dinner, Patricia made subtle digs about ambition, proper breeding, and the complications of office romances. Cassie felt herself shrinking under the scrutiny. "Mother," Julian said finally, his voice hard. Cassie earned her position through exceptional work. "If you can't treat her with respect, we're leaving." Patricia's eyes widened slightly. Julian's younger brother, Marcus, grinned with obvious approval. They didn't leave, but the evening was tense. In the car afterward, Cassie finally spoke. "Your mother hates me. She thinks I'm using you." "I don't care what she thinks," Julian said fiercely, taking her hand. "The only opinions that matter are yours and mine." But doubt had taken root. A week later, Derek appeared outside her apartment building. "Cassie, please." "Can we talk?" Against her better judgment, she agreed to coffee. "I made a mistake," Derek said, looking surprisingly humble. "Breaking up with you was the biggest mistake of my life. Tiffany and I are done. You and I, we had something real. We understood each other. We came from the same world." "We came from the same world," Cassie corrected. "Past tense. Does Ashford really have feelings for you?" Derek challenged. "Or are you convenient?" Men like him don't end up with women like us. They marry society women with the right connections. You're a distraction, Cassie. And when his family puts enough pressure on him, he'll break your heart." His words echoed her deepest fears. That night, when Julian called, she found herself distant, guarded. "What happened?" he asked, concern clear in his voice. She told him about Derek's visit, about her fears. "He's wrong," Julian said firmly. "Meet me at my office tomorrow. I want to show you something." The next day, legal documents covered Julian's desk. "I'm restructuring the Strategic Development Division," he explained. "You wouldn't be my employee anymore. You'd be my partner, with full ownership stake and independent authority. Your success would be completely separate from our relationship." Cassie stared in shock. "Julian, you can't restructure your company because of me." "I'm doing it because it's the right decision," he said, moving to stand before her. "Your ideas drive our success. You deserve equity and recognition. This removes the power dynamic. We become equals in business and in life." Tears filled her eyes. "You'd do this for me?" "I'd do anything for you," Julian said simply. "Because I'm in love with you, Cassie. Completely. Irreversibly in love." She launched herself into his arms, kissing him with all the emotion she'd been holding back. "I love you too," she whispered. "So much it terrifies me." Standing there in his office, Cassie felt something settle in her chest. This was real. This was worth fighting for. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The truth revealed, 3 months into their relationship, Cassie faced her biggest test. Julian's restructuring had given her a legitimate partnership role, but it also meant presenting directly to the board of directors, powerful executives who still viewed her with skepticism. The night before the presentation, Cassie sat at her dining table surrounded by reports and financial projections. Julian had offered to help, but she'd insisted on doing this alone. She needed to prove herself on her own merit. Her phone rang. Her best friend, Nina. "Please tell me you're not still working," Nina said. "I have to nail this presentation," Cassie replied, rubbing her tired eyes. "Patricia Ashford will be there. Half the board thinks I slept my way into this position." "Then show them how wrong they are," Nina said firmly. "You're brilliant, Cass. You always have been. Derek spent years making you forget that, but Julian sees the truth. Now make sure everyone else does too." The next morning, Cassie dressed in her sharpest suit, a charcoal gray ensemble she'd bought with her first partnership bonus. She looked professional, capable, confident. She needed to believe it herself. The boardroom was intimidating. 12 powerful people sat around a massive mahogany table. Patricia occupied the seat at the far end, her expression carefully neutral. Julian sat near the middle, and when their eyes met, he gave her an encouraging nod. "Ladies and gentlemen," Cassie began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Thank you for this opportunity. Today, I'm presenting our expansion strategy for sustainable technology integration in emerging markets." For the next 45 minutes, Cassie presented comprehensive analysis backed by meticulous research. She'd spent weeks examining market trends, identifying partnership opportunities, and developing financial projections. She fielded questions with confidence, addressed concerns with data, and demonstrated a depth of knowledge that came from genuine passion for the work. When she finished, silence filled the room. Then Richard Torres, one of the oldest board members, began to clap. Others joined in. "Exceptional work, Miss Wells," Richard said. "This is innovative thinking at its finest. I move to approve this initiative immediately." The vote was unanimous. As the meeting adjourned, several board members approached to congratulate her. Even Patricia's expression had shifted from skepticism to something resembling respect. "That was impressive," Patricia said quietly, stopping Cassie near the door. "I owe you an apology. I judged you unfairly based on assumptions rather than evidence. You've earned your position and you've earned my respect." Cassie blinked in surprise. "Thank you, Mrs. Ashford. That means more than you know." Patricia's lips curved in a small smile. "Call me Patricia, and for what it's worth, I haven't seen Julian this happy in years. Perhaps I was wrong about more than just your professional capabilities." As Patricia left, Julian appeared at Cassie's side, pulling her into a tight embrace. "You were magnificent," he murmured against her hair. "I'm so proud of you." "I couldn't have done it without you believing in me first," Cassie said, pulling back to look at him. "You gave me the confidence to believe in myself again." "No," Julian said softly, cupping her face. "That strength was always there. I just helped you remember it." That evening, they celebrated at their favorite quiet restaurant. Over wine and pasta, Julian reached across the table to take her hand. "I have something to tell you," he said, looking nervous in a way she'd never seen before. "That night at the gala, when I said I'd had feelings for you for a long time, I wasn't entirely honest about the timeline." Cassie's heart skipped. "What do you mean?" "I've been in love with you for over 3 years," Julian confessed. "Since that conference in Boston when you stayed up all night helping me fix the presentation after my laptop crashed. You never complained, just rolled up your sleeves and solved the problem. I watched you work, saw your dedication and brilliance, and realized I was completely gone." 3 years? Cassie whispered. "But you never said anything. You dated other people." "Because I was terrified," Julian admitted. "Terrified of ruining our working relationship, of making you uncomfortable, of not being what you needed. And yes, I dated other people trying to get over you. Obviously, that didn't work." Cassie felt tears prick her eyes. "I fell for you during that same trip. When you insisted on getting coffee at 3 in the morning and made terrible jokes to keep me awake. I thought I was alone in feeling this way." "We wasted a lot of time," Julian said with a sad smile. "Then let's not waste any more," Cassie said firmly. 2 weeks later, Derek made one final attempt. He showed up at Morgan Technologies, insisting on seeing Cassie. Security called her office, and she agreed to meet him in the lobby. "I heard about your board presentation," Derek said without preamble. "About your partnership." "I wanted to say, I was wrong about you, Cassie. I spent our entire relationship trying to make you smaller because I was threatened by your potential. I see that now." "Thank you for saying that," Cassie said quietly. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Derek. But it's not with me. It never will be again." "Is it serious with Ashford?" he asked. "Yes," Cassie said simply. "Very serious." Derek nodded, looking genuinely regretful. "He's lucky. I hope he knows that." "He does," said a voice behind them. Julian appeared, sliding his arm around Cassie's waist. "And I make sure she knows how lucky I am every single day." After Derek left, Cassie leaned into Julian's embrace. "You know, 6 months ago, I thought my life was falling apart. Derek had destroyed my confidence, I felt stuck in my career, and I was convinced I'd never find real love. And now?" Julian asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Now I have a career I'm passionate about, a partner who's truly my equal, and a man who loves me for exactly who I am." She turned in his arms to face him. "Now I realize that sometimes the best things come from the worst moments. If Derek hadn't been cruel at that gala, if you hadn't pretended to be my boyfriend, we might never have found the courage to admit our feelings." "So you're saying we should thank him?" Julian teased. "Absolutely not," Cassie laughed. "But I am saying that I'm grateful for where we ended up. Together." Julian kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. Around them, the lobby of Morgan Technologies buzzed with activity, employees coming and going, phones ringing, the busy hum of a successful company. But in that moment, Cassie was aware only of Julian, of the steady beat of his heart against hers, of the future stretching before them full of possibility. 6 months later, they stood on the rooftop terrace of Julian's penthouse, now their penthouse, watching the sun set over the harbor. The view was spectacular, but Cassie barely noticed. She was focused on the small velvet box Julian had just pulled from his pocket. "Cassandra Wells," he said, dropping to one knee. "You are my partner in every sense of the word. My equal, my best friend, the love of my life. Will you marry me?" Through happy tears, Cassie said yes. As Julian slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into his arms, Cassie thought about that terrified woman at the gala, convinced she wasn't good enough for this world. She'd been wrong. She'd always been enough. She just needed to believe it herself. And she'd needed someone who saw her worth clearly, who believed in her fiercely, who loved her completely. She'd found that someone. And together, they'd built something real, something lasting. something worth every moment of doubt and fear along the way. Their fake relationship had become the truest thing in her life, and this was only the beginning, the end.